Hello, friends and foes. Let's talk about building a brand for your TCG business. First, the key principle that I always come back to with business stuff, especially brand and reputation, is values and value. So I want you to remember, a brand is all about values and value. And then a way that you can think about brand, this is something that Hormozy often says, is that brand is the way that people feel when they think about you. You can curate that feeling through the values that you demonstrate and the value that you provide. And those two things, values and value, permeate every aspect of branding. And we'll start at the mundane stuff, like how to pick your name and kind of some fundamental design principles to keep in mind as you're building out like branding assets, packaging, and curating experiences for people with how you deliver offers to them. And then content, how to decide what type of content you make, where you should make it, how to optimize it, and so on. So that's the stuff we're going to go through here. Dive right in. Name. I've got a couple rules for your brand name. First of all, you want it to be in a lane. You want to have like a unique lane for your name that you can just like own that space. You want to be able to own that territory. And so you don't want to pick a name that is crowded with a bunch of other stuff. And particularly, I mean, in the case of like search results on platforms like Google search results, AI search results, social media search results, YouTube search results. It's going to be in your best interest to build a name with some combination of words or some sort of principle, some sort of variations on letters or something, or numbers or whatever, that in and of itself you can fairly easily carve out a territory to become swiftly searchable. And I think the best example I have of this is my own name as a human. My name is Christopher J. Fritz. That is the name that I now conduct all my operations under. But people know me as Chris. I've been Chris all my life. But what I realized several years ago is that for my goals, I need to be Googleable. And whenever I would Google the name Chris Fritz, there was just way too many people who were Googleable under the name Chris Fritz. And the same would apply to other platforms and stuff like that. And so whether I was trying to do music, whether I was trying, it didn't matter what I was trying to do, somebody else named Chris Fritz was already doing that thing. And so the likelihood that I was going to be able to become a dominant player in that space without having to spend like tons of money, tons of time on building brand recognition, it wasn't going to work out. And so I made a simple switch, and I changed all of my profiles and the way that I present myself officially online to Christopher J. Fritz. Added that middle initial. I did it for a couple reasons. I mean, there's a psychological aspect. I did it when I published my book. I had learned that adding an initial to an author name tends to drive up the amount of sales that book gets, because it's just kind of a signal of confidence and authority. And what I realized is that it would do double duty for me, because it also would create a defensible lane for me to do my creative work under. And so that's what I did. And then now, if you Google Christopher J. Fritz, I dominate the first page. If you search Christopher J. Fritz on many platforms, you're going to find some of my work somewhere. And as I continue to do more and more and more work, I'm findable in more places, and that just, it's leverage. And most of the projects that I've built are also Googleable, and it's a combination of choosing a defensible name in the first place from a strategic brand presence aspect, and then also, compounding upon that with the whole content strategy that I'll explain later. So, and I mean, you can Google my old stuff, like Roses from Bones is my old music project. That should be pretty easy to find, no matter where in the world you are at this point. Christopher J. Fritz, of course, you can find that. And eventually, I'll do Dead King Collection. It's the framing that I use on all my names. So what are some bad examples of names? I've got a couple here. You don't want something that's going to blend in. You don't want something that's going to fail to signal either values or value. You want to at least signal one of those things in your name, values or value. And so an example of something that is just not going to really be findable and is not defensible from a search and find perspective is a name like Snorlax Cards. If you made your brand, if you really love Snorlax and you really love cards, you might think it would be a cute idea to name your brand Snorlax Cards, but that would be a terrible idea. Not only because putting possibly a trademarked IP inside of your brand name would be a tremendous risk, but also because if you type the words Snorlax Cards into any platform, the odds that it would pull up your profile is pretty slim, because there's so many pieces of content that would reference that combination of words, Snorlax Cards. Even adding like a modifier like Snorlax Cards TCG Collector, probably still not going to be a very strong lane. So my kind of go-to in situations like this is like adding a color or something, or an animal or something. So even something as simple as like blue Snorlax Cards, that combination of words as a search phrase would be more defensible than just Snorlax Cards. I still wouldn't recommend it, but that's something that you could do. Adding you could do Red Lion TCG. That is defendable. That it's going to be easier to carve out a lane for that, and it's going to be easier to find yourself, and the likelihood that there's other stuff that's going to populate for that exact combination of words is lower. So that's a better starting point in my opinion. And it signals at least value, which is you are providing something to do with trading cards. So you have a value signal in there. Danny Phantom, the Card Coliseum, it's a good signal. It's a value signal card, and it signifies that he's selling cardboard. It has, for people who are a little bit more brand aware, it has that Pokemon association, so there's a little bit of values buried in there, which is good. So that's a good brand name. Deep Pocket Monster, great brand name. The lore of that, everything, he's got deep pockets. He loves pocket monsters, Pokemon, and he's going deep into Pokemon content. Great lore drop. And so he's got values and value in that name. Dead King Collection is a little bit more vague. It's not as clear. So in some ways, it's not necessarily as strong, but it is very defensible. And for me, I knew that in this TCG space, there was room for someone with my sterner disposition. I'm not charismatic and fun. I am a little silly sometimes. I'm not like a super stern and severe person, but I'm pretty serious most of the time. I'm not really great with sarcasm. Um, some people might say I'm extra because I'm just like too focused on stuff sometimes. Uh, take some things too seriously. And I suspected that there was probably room in the hobby for someone like me, but I needed to be able to brand around that. And so, I mean, I wear the Memento Mori hat. This is all my old merch from back from one of my old brands. So like, this is all just, I've always kind of been running on this concept. I'm a practicing Stoic, and Memento Mori has been a concept that has guided my life since I had my big religious and existential crisis in 2019. And that just permeates everything that I do. So I wanted that to be present in the brand name. And so that's why it's Dead King Collection. I have the collecting vibe because I am a collector, and I wanted it to be broad enough to have an umbrella over cards and books and manga, because I am planning to dive into books and manga too. But I also wanted it to connect to the values by which I shape my life and shape my business and even shape my collecting hobby. There is a certain philosophical aspect to collecting cards for me that, like, it's almost like a spiritual practice in some ways. Setting my expectations correctly going into stuff, and committing to learn through things, and learning how to appreciate everything and not choose disappointment when I don't have to in scenarios and stuff like that. All of that impacts how I experience cardboard. And so I wanted to tie all of that together into a name that has a little bit of a value signal as far as what is the value that you can get out of this at the top level, and then also connects into my values once people get a little bit more brand aware and get to know me. That was kind of a long time going in just on names, but names are important. It's how you it's how you make your first impression, and it ends up, the name is the container really that you build the rest of your business in. So it's worth spending some time thinking about what your name's going to be. At the same time, what I'll also say about names is that it also doesn't have to be that deep. You can build something successful with just about anything. I mean, one of the top tuna brands is Bumblebee Tuna. Top computer brand is Apple. But again, that does follow some of the principles. It's a pattern break. It's easily, type in Apple computers. The only thing you're going to find is Apple. So it's a defensible lane. There's a pattern break in there. And the pattern break in and of itself is somewhat of a value signal. What does an Apple have to do with a computer? And Apple wants to innovate and be different, have a different experience. So there's a case to be made for less serious names too. But in my opinion, like, meeting in the middle and being kind of serious about your name and only kind of optimizing it, I think that's what you want to avoid. So you can be like way wild off base, like Blue Flame Circuit Space Alien. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a great brand name, but you would certainly be able to be findable with that combination of words if you built enough content around it. So think of something, communicate some values and value. Pick a name that you can grow into and roll with that. Okay, next we're going to talk about design. Again, values and value. Design is really about vibes. It's really about feeling. For a logo, there's a couple things about logos. My channel obviously has a logo. It's the coffin with the sword and the crown. I wanted the logo to tie in directly with the name. I think that's always a good idea. I also wanted it to tie in with the values specifically. So I've got my color theming for the whole brand is mainly red, black, white, and gold. I'll probably tie in like a deep green and a deep blue eventually if I need to. But I'm going to stick to like primary colors and primal colors: red, green, blue, black, white, gold. That's kind of just an aesthetic thing to me, but that is a lane that I'm going to stay in, and I'm going to go for overall a darker color palette to add a certain amount of severity. But texture is something that was important to me in building my branding. So I use velvet for the collector side. I use black velvet. For the business side, I use red velvet. I want that texture laid in there because that is a pattern break that stands out at a subconscious level compared to everybody else that has like just the regular like Pokemon text with yellow, just like Pokemon, on flat, untextured backgrounds, and then some kind of cartoon like character or symbol or something. Everybody has that. I wanted something that stood out starkly different and was a signal just on a first impression that this is clearly a different experience, and that's called a pattern break. So that's why I was like, I want velvet and gold. And so that's what I've done for everything. And it seems to have worked because I caught a lot of attention pretty quickly with this channel, and it was the right attention. And many of you have now spent hours watching my content and are joining the community and stuff like that. And so that can be the power of design when it connects with values and value, and when it works as a bat signal of your values that then people recognize, and then they see something in it. They see something in your brand experience that they have been looking for. They see something that they resonate with. It's not just a commodity anymore. It's an experience, and that's what I was going for. A logo in and of itself is not necessarily an experience, but there is some experience to it. So be strategic about how you build your logo, how you select your branding, and try to have some consistency in how you design. Have some core colors that you use. Don't make things too complicated. I want people, when people see a combination of certain elements, like a flash of red velvet and gold and something alluding to TCGs, I want them to already be thinking, oh, that's Dead King. That's Dead King collection. Like, I want them to already be there. I don't want to have to fight uphill against the fact that, oh, that could be anything. It looks just like every other logo I've ever seen. And so the combination and the consistency of colors that I use, you'll notice a lot of my text overlays are red and black, or are white and black. But my thumbnails integrate a little bit of yellow there's a time and place to deviate from the core branding when you need to break a pattern. Yellow is an alarming color, subconsciously and naturally and biologically. It's the color of poisonous snakes and stuff like that. So yellow is always eye-catching and arresting. Yellow on a black background, classic way to just catch attention, to say like, hey, to say to the amygdala, like, hey, you got to pay attention to this. So that's why I build my thumbnails, build stuff like that in there. But I try to have at least a similar core aesthetic. So even if I have some deviations in, sometimes I'll have white text on the overlay, sometimes I'll have yellow text, a couple different elements there. The framing is always similar, and that ties in with what I said about logos. Like, there's my actual channel logo, but also my face is the logo. So when you see my face in a thumbnail, a stranger, my face is not going to mean anything to them. But once somebody has watched a couple of my videos, my face becomes just as powerful of a logo as my logo does. And so that's why my thumbnails are always constructed so that when my video makes an impression, you're seeing my actual logo, the little round logo. You're seeing my face, which is my logo too. And then you're seeing familiar framing, so that it's like, oh, I've seen this, I trust this guy. Or if you haven't seen me and my face my face and my logo can't do any of that familiarity work, I build in other elements that can still be arresting like my color selection and text placement and sizing on the thumbnails. You'll notice how I construct my thumbnails. I try not to have too many words, at least in the showcase of the thumbnail. I try to include some sort of interesting element, but not that's just a shoe-in. So I've been clipping Reddit posts because that adds a sense of familiarity. It shifts the context of the thumbnail from just being a stranger to it's a stranger talking about something that I have some familiarity with. And so the yellow and the black is eye-catching and attention-grabbing. The Reddit snippets and overlays, or like a brand logo of TCG Player or Pokemon or Sorcery or something, people recognize those elements, so those add some familiarity. And then how I generally try to have like a hand out or have something arresting in the thumbnail as well, so that there's just a lot of signal there going straight into the subconscious. And the consistency of your design is what allows that to compound in your favor or not. And so once people start having a brand experience with me, I try to make sure that brand experience is consistent in the colors, in the fonts that I use, in the words that I use. At the top of my channel banner, I've got the red velvet, and I didn't do the same gold, but it's like a gold tone. And I've got audacity, tenacity, and I forgot the third one. Another A word. Ambition, tenacity, and audacity. Like, that is a values statement. Some people are going to see that and think, this guy takes himself way too seriously. Those are not my people. Some of you are going to see it and think, wow, this is clearly something different. And this is something that makes me feel like I know myself better. Like I see myself in this. So if you are into cardboard and you see the words ambition, tenacity, and audacity up there and you think, hell yeah, then you're my person and I'm your person. Like there's room to build a relationship there in an exchange of value and values because we're on the same page. And so all of this stuff kind of factors in. The language that I use, I intentionally violate a lot of best practices. A lot of people would say that as a communicator, you always want to dumb things down, use simple words. You need to be really bombastic, really, really charismatic. You need to have perfect lighting and stuff like I have bad lighting. I don't compromise on my word use. I just talk how I think. And I don't try to be someone that I'm not. I talk in pretty quiet tones, pretty relaxed, and I leave the mistakes in. I leave the evidence of thinking in my content, and that speaks, it connects, and it permeates the whole brand. And so that's kind of design and aesthetics. That's how that all ties together and takes what could just be a fragmented, kaleidoscopic combination of brand touches and instead makes each contact that someone has with your brand multiply with the other contacts so that you build familiarity faster. And then when somebody knows, likes, and touches, when somebody knows, likes, and trusts you, it's like almost midnight. They will buy stuff from you. Number 3 is packaging. This ties in with the aesthetics, but it's about delivering the experience that you deliver. And so I'm going to talk explicitly about TCGs. It's an e-commerce retail business for most of you. And so what you are offering, you might think you're only offering products, that you're just selling trading cards, but you are combining products, services, and experiences all together, and you need to take all of that seriously. The service you provide is the curation of your collection, sourcing and listing stuff that people want in a way that they can find it. The service that you provide also is how you bring your stuff to market, how you instill confidence in people, how you make the shopping experience rewarding and not a chore. TCG Player is a pretty bad shopping experience. You can beat that on your own website by just putting some effort into how you build your collections, so certain combinations of products, and how you set up your filters so that people can shop easier and find the stuff that they're looking for. But it goes beyond that. It's also the amount of work that you put into actually conditioning the cards. You do people a good service when you sell them the stuff that they actually are looking for, instead of selling them a card in the wrong condition. Then you do them a bad service. So there's a service aspect to it. The experience of receiving the package, of opening it, and finding something different than they expected, which if they're a regular TCG buyer on most of the marketplace platforms, usually they're expecting to be disappointed. So if you can invert that and instead impress them and serve them and make them feel like you actually cared, then that becomes a valuable experience. Ways that I have done this include a handwritten note, include adding stickers, ideally branded stickers, so you connect in with design and name, because you want strong impressions, and you want people to easily be able to remember you, so that later when they want what you sell, you come to mind quickly and they go seek you out, and they have an easier time seeking you out because they recall. So if you're going to put stickers in, I'd say it should have your logo instead. And the thing about logos, I got to go back to that. When you're making a logo, one of my number one rules is make it tattooable. So build your logos in such a way that you can imagine someone actually tattooing it on their body. Like if you can do that, if you can build a logo that feels like a tattoo, that's a good logo. And so that means it's got to be simple. It's got to be something that you can display tiny and not lose detail, or display it big and still like have it look good and have it communicate what it's supposed to communicate. And there's got to be some sort of symbolism. I would say you're best off having some sort of symbolism embedded in it. A really great example of this is the 21 Pilots iconography that they use. So their logo and how they leverage that logo in different ways on their different releases and stuff like that. The logo becomes an in-crowd signal, and plenty of people have 21 Pilots tattoos. Likewise, both of them have like a sigil. Josh and Tyler, I can't believe I forgot their names. They each have like a sigil or a symbol that people actually get tattooed. I remember I was at a Muse concert, and the girl in front of me only really cared about the opener, which was 30 Seconds to Mars. And she had the 30 Seconds to Mars logo tattooed on the back of her neck. And that's what really made me realize, like, if I'm going to make a logo, it's got to be tattooable, because that's how you make a strong impression. That's also how, like, if you want people to wear your merch, if you want a lot of people to wear your merch, your logo's got to look cool. Like, it's just got to look cool. And so you don't want, like, if you want to be able to put your logo on like custom card sleeves and stuff like that, like, it's got to be something that someone's not going to be embarrassed to display. It's also got to be something that's not hard to replicate and to put in many different circumstances. So if it's got too much detail, too many colors, stuff like that, it's not going to be good. And so these essential branding principles, you can do a lot with simplicity. And when you maximize the impact that you can drive through simplicity, it's easier to build consistency. But back to the packaging. Use that tattooable logo in your packaging. Find ways to make it part of the experience. Find ways to make sure your name is part of the experience, but also make sure that the experience itself is rewarding. Like the opening experience should feel good. It should feel rewarding. They should have a sigh of relief and have joy when they open it, not open it and then immediately be disappointed because yet again, a business has tried to take advantage of them. So it's packaging and the delivery experience, all that ties in. And again, like I said at the beginning, brand is how somebody feels about you when they're exposed to something that's connected to you. So if you make them feel good when they actually receive your cards and when they reach out to you to get help with something, like if you make them feel good, if the way that you communicate is clean and honest and kind, they'll remember that and they will spend more money with you. Last is content. That's what we're doing here. Content is one of the best ways to signal values and share value. I sell trading cards, and yet I'm talking about business stuff. I'm talking about philosophy. I'm talking about all this stuff. I tie in values and I provide value, and that is why. Does it appeal to everybody? No. You're not supposed to appeal to everybody. You want to hyper appeal to a specific type of person, and you want to become their favorite person for whatever the thing is that you do. And the more unique that you can be, often the better. So tons of people are doing trading cards. Less people are fusing trading cards and business. Even less people are fusing trading cards and business and philosophy. Even less people are fusing trading cards and business and philosophy and manga and books. And so that's the direction I'm going. In marketing and sales, the principle is called building a category of one. With your product, with your experience, with your packaging, with everything about you, you can build a category of one where you don't really have competition. You might have peers adjacent to you in similar industries, or in the same industry doing similar things, but you're no longer a commodity. And one of the best ways to differentiate yourself as not a commodity is with the content that you produce. And it's the values that you demonstrate and the value that you provide to the specific customer, the specific viewer that you're interacting with. So to get granular about the tactics here, content, one example would be short form content. Most people's inclination, including mine, when you start making content is I'm going to rip packs and just record videos of that. That's a good start. You got to start somewhere. So if that's what you're doing, no shame. But you got to do values and values. So you need an edge. You need an angle. Ripping random packs all the time, probably not going to work. What could work though? Focusing exclusively on stuff that's not getting ripped a lot right now, that's still affordable. So I would stay away from vintage because it's too expensive and honestly too crowded. It's where everybody went. I would probably stay away from new because it's so hard to get and it's also very competitive. I'd probably do mid-era deep collector stuff. If you're trying to do a rip channel, which I am going to get back to doing rip content on the other channel, rip stuff that other people aren't really ripping, but people are curious about, or people can be made to be curious about if they're introduced to it. Or don't even do rip content at all, just show off art or show off obscure sets or something, like stuff that people aren't really thinking about, so that then you demonstrate values by you're digging deep into something into a hobby they cherish. So you're demonstrating values and you're providing value because you're providing a perspective or information that they don't frequently come across. Going toe to toe in the search results with Deep Pocket Monster and Alex Ketchum to rip the latest set, good luck, man. good luck. But ripping Thunder Junction in 2026, or Crimson Vow, or even like Surging Sparks, just stuff that other people aren't really paying attention to, but newcomers to the hobby maybe are into, or like taking a unique viewing angle on it, like Sleeve No Card Behind. He covers a lot of the connecting art, and he did a whole thing on like Delta species recently. Really cool, great example of like deep dives into stuff. He doesn't even have to buy product for that. All he does is present information that's already out there and just curate it in a way that's pretty interesting and cool for you. He doesn't need news. He doesn't need anything. The information's already out there. He just has to go collect it and present it to you in a time and place that is interesting. So, and you can do this with short form. You can do this with long form. You can do this with an email list. So short form, you'd want to think, how can you compress the values and value? And ideally, how can you do a high volume of shorts? And how can you give your shorts a longer shelf life? So I usually combine short form with paid ads. That's how I do it. That's how I've done it for just about every business that I've been involved in for the last couple of years now. It's always what I recommend. If you're going to do short form, combine it with paid and try to make stuff that's going to be evergreen, and just pay to just keep putting it in front of people so that you're impossible to ignore and impossible to forget. And then long form is your deep cuts. So if you think of like a music album, you've got your viral hits that everybody can listen to and they can just enjoy the song. And then most people aren't going to go past the viral hits and go actually listen to the whole album. But some people will, and the rest of the album is for those people. The deep cuts and the B-sides are not for the viral hit makers. They're not for radio. They're for the people that they hear themselves in the music, and then they want more of that. And so they go seek out the rest. And that's what your long form, much of your long form content is going to be. It's going to be those deep cuts and B-sides. Like, I can get you through my content, if you're the right viewer, I can get you to spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, 80 minutes with me, because the deep cuts and the B-sides of this type of long form content that I do they feel good to you. They feel right. And so that's an example of just how that works. And then the other thing I'd say is email and blogs. That's something that I will be deploying soon. Those are more for nurture and conversion. You're not really going to drive discovery through that. You drive discovery through short form and ads, and a little bit through long form. You drive nurture through long form and email and Discord, stuff like that. You're not going to drive discovery that way, but you'll drive nurture, and you'll drive conversion largely through Discord and email, and even to a certain extent through long form. It was a lot. I'm getting really, really tired. It's midnight. I've done 3 videos today. I hope that this was helpful. Ask some questions below. I want to help you, and I want to teach you the stuff that you're looking to learn. Announcements. Join the email list. I'm going to be launching giveaways soon. Visit list.getdkc.com if you want to join that. Discord is popping off. If you want to get into the Discord beta, I'm still building it out, but if you want to get in, you can. Go to my website, scroll down to the bottom, fill out the contact form, and tell me, hey, I want to join the Discord. If you want to buy some cardboard, visit www.getdkc.com. I'd love to sell something to you. And most importantly, keep hustling. Keep pursuing your dream. And like I said in previous videos, when you get better, the world gets better. So keep up the good work. Peace.